Uh, Usually, people are so much anxious about mandible, how the mandible is growth, everything related to mandible. So today, I'm going to discuss about mandible in detail. Basically, you can see this is I'm opening my mouth. This is the lower jaw, and this is mandible, and this is the strongest bone of face. It encloses all 32 teeth, and here's a joint in which maxilla and mandible is associated, and it helps in opening and closing of the mouth. Okay, and it is developed from the first pharyngeal arch. How does it look? It looks like a horseshoe shape. Okay, which lodges the teeth. You can see here, and a pair of rami. Okay. Now we are going to talk about body of mandible. Each half of the body has outer and inner surfaces. Like in अंदर का एक होगा, एक बाहर का होगा, inner surface, which our tongue can touch, and the outer surface, which is the buccal mucosa. This is the buccal mucosa, or you can say cheek. Outer surface is touched by cheek. Okay, so outer surface covers whatever things I'm going to discuss. Symphysis menti, mental protuberance here. Here you can see below the premolars, first premolars, we'll see mental foramen. Here is symphysis menti. It's almost lying in the lowest part and the midline of the face. Okay, and here you can see here just below first premolars, mental foramen is there, and as the age grows, it goes more posteriorly as we reach the adult age. Oblique line. So the oblique line is continuation of sharp anterior border of ramus. Mandible has also divided into some parts like ramus, body, and so here now just incisor teeth. Can you see this incisor teeth? Just below, just behind the incisor teeth is the incisive fossa. Okay, and the inner surface of the mandible, it consists of malahide line is a prominent ridge in the inner surface. Now I'm talking about inner surface. Outer surface I have already discussed. Now I'm going to talk about the inner surface here. Inner surface has got a malahide line. It's a very prominent ridge. What is ridge here is a little bit protuberance. Okay, that runs obliquely. And how it runs, it obliquely downwards, okay, and forwards from below the third molar. Here this is the third molar, and it runs below the third molar, and it's like forward and downward. Okay, below the malahide line, the surface is slightly hollowed. It's just below the malahide line. It's just a little bit hollowed, and this is called as submandibular fossa here. And above the submandibular fossa is below the malahide line, and above the malahide line is sublingual fossa. Okay, in which sublingual gland lies. So it's very important to keep above the malahide line is sublingual gland. Okay, and that is why that fossa is known as sublingual fossa. And below the malahide line is what I've told right now. What is below the malahide line is submandibular fossa, okay, which lodges the submandibular gland. So it is, you can call it as demarcation. Okay, this malahide line, it extends from the median line of the third molars, and it is growing downwards and forwards, and above the malahide line is above the malahide line is sublingual fossa, and below the malahide line is submandibular fossa. Okay, sublingual gland is above the malahide line, and submandibular gland is below the malahide line. Okay, above the malahide line, all these things we have discussed. Now the posterior surface of symphysis menti, I've told you here's a symphysis menti is here. So just posteriorly, this is anterior surface, and this is this portion where the tongue can touch is the posterior surface, and here the posterior surface of symphysis menti is marked by four small elevations called the superior and inferior genial tubercles. Okay, malahide groove, which is present on the ramus, extends onto the body below the posterior end of the malahide line. So far as we have discussed about the body of the mandible, now we can go to the ramus of the mandible. We can go, and now how the ramus of the mandible looks like. The ramus of the mandible is actually quadrilateral in shape, and it has got two surfaces. This is lateral and this is medial. Okay, this is lateral and this is medial. Two borders, upper, lower, anterior and posterior, and four processes, coronoid and condyloid. Okay, this has got two processes, coronoid and condyloid. Now the lateral surface is flat and there is a number of oblique ridges. Medial surface, as I've already told you, it's below the premolars, first premolar, so that's mandibular foramen, lies above the center of ramus, and malahide groove, it just begins below the mandibular foramen. Okay, upper border of ramus is very thin and is curved downwards, forming the mandibular notch. So this is I'm just looking on the diagram and explaining you. Okay, so as I've already told you, surface is medial and lateral, borders upper, lower, anterior and posterior, and processes is two, coronoid and condyloid. Okay, so medial surface medial surface presents the following: what? Mandibular foramen, which is just above the center of ramus at the level of occlusion. This is very important. Occlusal surfaces of teeth, like this is here. It might be somewhere here. Here is mandibular foramen. Okay, it leads into the mandibular canal, which descends into the body of mandible and opens. So अंदर से जाता है, it goes inside this foramen, all this, and it opens into the ventral foramen, which is just below the first premolar. And anterior margin of mandibular foramen is marked by sharp tongue-shaped projection called lingula. Anterior margin, if you want to look, it is marked by a sharp tongue-shaped projection called the lingula. The lingula is directed towards the head or condyloid process of the mandible. Okay, the upper border of ramus is very thin, so we have to keep in mind that the upper border of ramus is thin and curved downwards, forming the mandibular notch. It's a very important landmark. The lower border is the backward continuation of base of mandible. Posteriorly, it ends by becoming the continuous with the posterior border at the angle of the mandible. So now, coronoid process which is also known as crow's beak process, is a flattened triangular upward projection from the anterior superior part of the ramus. Okay, its anterior border is continuous with the anterior border of ramus. Condyloid process is a strong upward projection from the posterior superior part of the ramus. So these are small things we should keep in mind. These are the important landmarks also, but we should keep in mind. Okay, now we should know the attachments from this mandible. Whatever we can think, what all be the attachments, like muscles, because we cannot open our mouth or close if we don't have muscular attachment. So first of all, oblique line, so this is buccinator. Okay, and it is present, it originates from the anterior border of the first molar tooth. Incisive fossa give rise to here. Okay, incisive fossa gives rise to mentalis and mental slips of orbicularis oris. Superior constrictor muscle of the pharynx arises from an area above the posterior end of malahide line. Superior constrictor muscle of the pharynx, it arises. So this, what I am going to discuss right now, is very important, because we should keep in our mind all the attachments which are required. Okay.